Yo, what up? Back at it again. Which means it's time for me to close all these tabs. Every single one of these tabs that I have open, which is naturally at least 7 at any given time. But we need to reduce it down to like 2 or 3. Oh man, all the horrifying news. All that horrifying news that's going on currently right now in the real world that we live in. Sound check for YouTube. We're good. We're good, guys. We're doing social media stuff real quick. See if we can get it popping off in the live chat, baby. Let's go. We're here on a Tuesday because, it's 4th of July weekend or whatever, but it was really because I'm stupid and didn't plan ahead. Broke Boy Sports Podcast, episode 192 is... Ooh. Oh, man, I forgot. Yo, guys, don't forget to remind me... don't forget to remind me. I have, a huge career, life-changing type thing that's happening, and I have to mention it on this show when I can officially mention it. But I can't do that yet, because naturally, all good things require you to sign an NDA. So, yeah, let me know. Don't forget to remind me. You know what I mean? Don't forget for me to forget. All right, cutting it down. Got the script open. Broke Boy Sports Podcast. Need that link. Need that link form, baby. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where'd you go from, Cotton Eye Joe? Have we gotten hit with any copyright strikes yet? I don't think so. I legit thought there was a three rule copyright strike thing that was going on for real. Where if I get busted 3 times, they take my whole channel away. That has not happened to your boy yet. Even though I've been apparently caught doing copyright stuff multiple times over, according to YouTube. So that's interesting. Twitch. Sorry, hold on. Everybody chill, bro. Everybody just calm the fuck down. But yeah, it's been pretty tough keeping the secret that I'm keeping to myself, honestly. That is the saddest message you can send a person. Getting 2 people to watch live is so hard, especially considering I have 50 something followers. But also I'm not consistent enough to be upset about things, or I'm not consistent enough to have anything to say to people about it, really. Shit. I'm on the wrong Twitch. I'm on the creator dashboard. Twitch.tv. By the way, shout out to Twitch for deleting their app, which I think is a bad idea, but what do I know? Control C. Today's episode is called Lying in Wait, because that feels like all we're doing when it comes to this Kevin Durant shit. Which is, let's be for real, is what we're doing. NBA Twitter. Hashtag. Oh, by the way, if you got questions for my AMA for my birthday, yeah, we're doing it again, guys. I'm gonna do it on the 15th, which is the day before. So I won't actually be drinking on that episode because I have an MLQ match, Major League Quidditch match, the following Saturday, and out of respect for, being an athlete, I think it would be really shitty for me to be on a stream drinking live while my teammates and my team are getting ready to play for our playoff lives. So, yeah, man. And on top of that, honestly, man, it doesn't affect me. We went to New Orleans 3 or 4 weeks ago, and and I drank what I thought was 500 milliliters of scotch, but I had a 1.75 milliliter bottle of scotch, and I drank half of that. So I drank, a lot. which, by the way, has me more than confident that I'm going to be able to do my 30 ounces of alcohol in a short period of time, because I drank all of that scotch, which I did the math. So, like, in 1.75 milliliter, in a 1.75 liter container, the whole thing is 60 ounce, or the whole thing is like 59 point something ounces or whatever, which means your boy can very easily get 30. When we get to 60 years old and we got to take 60 shots of alcohol, you know, maybe we'll have a problem. But as of right now, 30 seems like it's pretty easy. I didn't even feel bad when I woke up the next day. And I drank a lot of it in like a really short amount of time. But it was fun. It was fun. Anyway, that was sad drinking. That wasn't even other types of drinking. That was like sad drinking because of us losing. So, yeah, this will be happy drinking for still being alive, to witness another glorious year. You know what I mean? Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Cotton Eye Joe. Sorry, I just saw a really dumb re-aggregated for the 50 billionth time video. By the way, to the aggregator people, get creative for the first time in your life. Like, legitimately get some kind of creativity flowing through your body at some point. And do us all a favor, instead of reposting the same 7 videos over and over again. I would appreciate that drastically. Yeah, apparently they be putting mozzarella cheese on tacos. They be putting mozzarella cheese on tacos in Kansas. Y'all need to stop that. Please do. Like, on the real. Don't do that. It's disgusting on a lot of levels. Shout out to everybody who joins in the chat on Twitch or on YouTube, or just watches at some point. I appreciate anybody who takes time out of their day, because I know every single second is precious for a lot of people, and especially in the world that we live in now, where, you know, everybody's overworked and underpaid, baby. So for you to take even 5 minutes to check on my show, I appreciate it. We're gonna get it started here in a second. Don't forget, you can ask questions. Today's white blonde people. Jesus Christ, man. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna unfollow. Bro, like, guys, Barstool Sports is so painfully white, it's ridiculous. Like, I was listening to Pardon My Take, which is the only thing from Barstool that I actually actively consume, and I don't even follow. Like, I follow Big Cat and I follow PMT or PFT because I think that they're not suspect. Shout out to the boy Travis for going live. Anyway, they're so painfully white, it's ridiculous. And oh my god, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like they were doing a, oh wow, there's people in the chat. What's up? They were doing a Mount Rushmore of boys, of the boys, like their terminology they mean for like cool people and shit like that. They picked NBA Youngboy, and one person on the show who is under the age of 40 didn't know who NBA Youngboy was, and I was just kind of like, I can't, like, I mean, like, he's one of the most prominent musicians on the face of the planet right now. Whether I like his music or not, which I don't, it's still like, yo, come on, bruh. Come on. Anyway, if you got anything NBA, NFL related, or anything sports related in general that you got a question about that you want answered on the show, drop it in the chat. We can have a conversation about it. I got a whole show that we're chopping up and getting ready to rip out here. We got NBA free agency news that's on the ticker below. I went through and I had to do the extremely painful job of finding where the inserts are at, which prevent it from being all one line across, because that's just one line of text all the way across on a document. So if you have, like, if you hit like enter and like space it down, it makes it 2 lines and you only get half the information that people have been putting out there. So I had to go through and sift through all of the text to find that one It was actually 3 different times I hit enter by accident while I was doing the spacing, and it's the equivalent. It's a great test. If you ever want to become a police officer, make somebody have to do that. It's a great test of investigation skills, because guess what? The enters all look like spaces, right? They all look like regular spaces. Anyway, especially the way it goes. Anyway, let's get the show started here, which means it's time to do our favorite part of the warm up, ladies and gentlemen, and that is to open up Spreaker, our podcast recording equipment, which probably has an update which will shut down this stream. Look at that, we're good, baby. Oh my God, what a day! What a day! What a day! Let's see. Copy and paste. We're not typing things together. You know, we work really hard to not have to type things into text box and stuff like that. Shout out to everybody checking out the show live. I appreciate that. I really do. Let's get this show popping, baby. Broke Boy Sports Podcast. We talk about the best and the worst that sports has to offer every single week. I wouldn't say every week, but, you know. I try. I really do. I'm sorry. I'm a person with another full-time job, and I'm trying to turn this into a full-time job, so that's a little tough. It's a little tough out here, you know what I mean? This show is called the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, you know. 0 budget. Oh, man, did I tell you guys the story about how I tried to get the all-time try leader for Team USA Rugby? Hey, what's up, man? F. Jimenez out there, 504. Shout out. You're one of the guys who listens to Barry on Deck, right? One of the people who listens to Barry on Deck. But yeah, so I'll finish telling this story, then we can get the show started. I tried to reach out to I follow her on Instagram, and 2 of her teammates follow me on Instagram. I follow her on Instagram, obviously, because she's a very attractive woman and very, very good at sport. I also saw her on TikTok before I followed her on Instagram, but Instagram follow, definitely worth it. If you're trying to get the hookup, hold on, I got you right here. Ooh, man, hold on a second. This could take a second. Anyway, I'll tell you the story while I'm looking up her stuff. I asked her, would she come on the podcast and talk about like her path, because she started off as like a track athlete, and I think she played a little bit of field hockey in college or something like that. The Deckheads, unstoppable, bro. Unstoppable force. Shout out to Barry Laminack for being kind enough to let me come on his show and helping me get to the point where we had over 50 followers to get us one step closer to being affiliate. Man, where is? It's got to be on here somewhere. Her name is Natalie. Why is it not coming up? Anyway, I'll hit you with her IG later, guys. Anyway, I hit her up and I was like, hey, would you come on my podcast for like a couple of minutes and talk about your path and your journey and stuff like that? Me thinking like, oh man, Team USA Rugby doesn't get enough love. I'm gonna go out of my way to like make sure that I talk about like one of the best athletes in the country at the time right now, right? And even still is probably gonna go down as one of the greatest Team USA Rugby players of all time. Great find, by the way, for Team USA, who really, honestly, for the most part, does a decent job of not harboring child molesters. But for the most part, like Team USA Women's Rugby been really blowing up since the Olympics. They did a really good job. I know they had a tough matchup and they lost in the semifinals, I think, for the gold medal tournament. But nonetheless, I loved it. And I started following a bunch of them on TikTok and stuff like that, because they do a pretty good job of kind of giving you a glimpse of what like a professional athlete who makes like a normal person's paycheck, not even a normal person, is slightly above average, right? As opposed to like ridiculously out of your league. Anyway, they do a really good job. They're relatable people. And I asked her to come on my show, and she hit me with, oh, what's the budget for your podcast look like? And I was like, I mean, it is called the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, so the budget is 0. And she was like, okay, cool. So like it's $100 for 30 minutes of talking to me. And I was like, damn. Shout out to you for going out there, knowing your worth, knowing the value of your time and stuff like that. But your boy ain't spending $100. I was taught very few things that I pay attention to in journalism school or communication school. I was never in a journalism class or anything like that. I never purport myself to be a journalist. But nonetheless, she hit me with, yeah, $100 for 30 minutes. And I was like, cool. So like, I am like kind of morally against paying people for interviews and stuff like that for like a whole bunch of different reasons. But yeah, I was like, yo, shout out to her for knowing her worth, because she know 30 minutes of her time is way more valuable to me than like 30 minutes of her time is way more valuable to her than it is to talk to some doofus on the internet, right? That's a barrier to put up to stop idiots like me from asking her, can she come on my podcast and talk about sports, right? And I respect it. I really do. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you, like, if you want to talk to the best player on Team USA Rugby right now, it's going to cost you $100 for 30 minutes. And, you know, I respect it. I really do. Go out there and get your money, especially if it's people trying to ask for your time. It makes sense that you would ask for something in exchange. What else we got here? All right, let's get it popping. Get the show started in 3, 2, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, my name is Ashton G. Lewis, and you are tuned into the one and only Broke Boy Sports Podcast. I will point out there is a Broke Boy podcast. They stopped recording like a couple of years ago, but nonetheless, I would be lying to you. You know, I'd hate to start our relationship off with a lie. There is another podcast called the Broke Boy Podcast. Anyway, don't listen to that. Listen to my episodes. I post every single week about the best and the worst that sports has to offer, and that's what we're about to do here today, live and in prime time. And when I say prime time, I mean obviously 4 p.m. on a Tuesday after the 4th of July. If you are in the chat checking out what's going down, hit me up. Let me know what you did for the 4th of July weekend, and or what you didn't do, like myself. I basically did a bunch of work for this podcast to get ready for it and everything like that. So shout out to everybody who's checking us out live, and anybody who's new to the show that's out there. Feel free to write questions about the NBA free agency, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show. We do have geek news this week. We have best of the best, worst of the worst. We have a flurry of other things that we have to get to as well. Don't worry, we're going to talk about a wide-ranging world of the big world of sports. You know, we only do this show one time a week, so we only get the best and the juiciest of the juicy stories, right? So here we go. Taking it from the top, ladies and gentlemen. I would be remiss if we didn't start off with geek news. If you're not familiar, I am a massive geek myself. We used to call this segment Nerd News, and I would say that that's an incorrect... sorry, let me get this free advertisement out of the way. Stay hydrated, though. We do have 2 hydration breaks throughout the course of the show. Anyway... We have geek news, not nerd news, which is what I used to call it. And this one actually pretty good. So it's called, the segment, of course, called Crown the Queen. So the Bayou Adventure, which is themed after Tiana, who is the the first black Disney princess from Disney as a whole. She is... from The Princess and the Frog, even though there was like one massive fundamental issue with that movie, it's the fact that like you very rarely see her actually as a black princess on screen. That is an actual historical trope that a lot of, I don't know how to describe it, a lot of people fall into when they come to like depicting like people of color on camera. They have something where like they get transformed into something else, and then they have to earn their way back into being their human form. And so you actually don't spend a lot of time watching that person live their life on screen kind of deal. Whatever. Nonetheless, Tiana, first black Disney princess. If you haven't seen Princess and the Frog and you're under the age of 15, go check it out. I would not, I like Disney stuff, but I know the demographics. You know what I mean? I know I'm not a part of the demo. Anyway, Tiana's Bayou Adventure is a ride that is coming in the year 2024 for the Disney parks. I think for Disneyland and Disney World. For those of you who don't know, I'll give you a glimpse. I have a couple of massive flaws in me as a human being. One of them is not being able to differentiate between Disneyland and Disney World, even though I've been to one of the two. I've been to the one that is in Florida, whatever one that is, but for some reason, everybody has it absolutely memorized that it's Disneyland or Disney World. I don't know why. I'm not one of those people. Maybe it just didn't matter that much. I actually went twice. I went with my mom and my dad one time, and still don't know the difference. Anyway, the one that's in Florida I've been to. Crown the Queen is in reference to the recent change. They announced this in 2020 that they were going to change up the ride. Damn it, what is it called? What was it called? It was one of the rides that they had at the Disney park that is centered around Song of the South, which is the most despicable Disney movie ever. It's been repeatedly torn apart as to why it's like massively racist on multitudes of reasons. It's also like super old. It was made in the 40s, so it was made, 50 years? Almost half a century before I was ever born. But nonetheless, I know what Song of the South is, and none of the things that I know about Song of the South are good. And there's a Disney ride that is centered around it that is about... centered around like a Bayou trip, and now they're repurposing it for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which once again is Disney recognizing that there are some flaws in the way that they became the multi-billion-dollar organization that now dominates most of media in the world that we exist in. And I don't think there's anything wrong with recognizing, hey man, we came up a certain way, things have changed, the world is moving forward, we need to move forward with our identity, we need to not hold up these bastions of hatred that have gone on for a long time. And you could talk about how like a Disney amusement park ride doesn't represent any type of hatred, but guess what it does do? It does normalize a massive amount of racism because a lot of Disney adults know exactly where that ride originates from. And then of course anybody else who would do any like basic research as to where that ride comes from would come along and get that information as to how Song of the South is something that actually was meant to push stereotypes about black people and a lot of things about the South as a whole. So I think also Song of the South is where those crows from Dumbo come from. Anyway, listen to the words that the crows say. Just like Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame, easily one of the most terrifying songs in the history of Disney. A lot of people don't respect it. I respect Hellfire as easily the creepiest song in the history of Disney. It is about literally a priest begging for a woman to become his possession or she burn in a pit of hell. All in a Disney movie, in a kid's Disney movie. Very casually. Anyway, got a lot of people popping in the chat today. Maybe we need to start recording at this time every day. Anyway, we got other stuff. That was Geek News, ladies and gentlemen. The transition of one of Disney's more unscrupulous rides into its new form, something that we can all get behind and something we can all support. Best of the best, ladies and gentlemen. As you guys know, the show is billed as the best and the worst that sports has to offer, and I would be remiss if we didn't have two segments called Best of the Best and Worst of the Worst. Today's Best of the Best goes to Mark Appel. If you are a Houston fan or a Astros fan in general, you're very familiar with Mark. Mark is previously 2013, I believe, was the year, long ago, many moons ago, in the year 2013, Mark Appel was the number one overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft, and basically ever since that point, his life has gone on like not on a roller coaster, but basically a plummeting spiral into the depths of hell, and he's somehow come out of it. So Mark is officially the oldest person to make his debut in Major League Baseball. It has been 9 years, technically 10 years, because he got drafted in 2012 and went back to school. He got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, which, hey, if there was ever something that as a professional athlete that would convince you to go back to school where you have to go to class and focus on being a baseball player and also like focus on like not making money at all, it would be being signed by the Pittsburgh Pirates. I totally understand it, Mark. I feel like, once again, great decision despite all the things that have happened. 9 years, a lot of those years in the minors, 3 years not only not playing but also recovering from Tommy John surgery that went horribly awry, I think twice at one point, fought through a lot of mental strife and physical pain throughout his journey to the major leagues, and there he is, ladies and gentlemen. He played for the Angels last week, and as a matter of fact, he didn't just play. Mark Appel got his first strikeout in the bigs in his first debut. Shout out to him for, once again, ladies and gentlemen, stick-to-itiveness, you know what I mean? Something that's highly valuable for most people in any realm of sports in general, but something that you got to applaud, especially when it comes to this level. Mark Appel was also one of the people that during the lockout gave a lot of people a glimpse into what it's like to be a minor league baseball player. He did a whole thread on Twitter, and I'm sure you can find it on his Twitter account. I don't know how frequently he tweets or whatever, but I do follow him just because of like his... At one point early on, he was like a draft pick for the Astros, right? Like he was an Astros player. Anyway, he tweeted out this long thread about the struggles of being a minor league player. He even did the next step of prefacing it before people got in the comments and started talking about it, about how he semi-struggled, even though he was the number one pick in the Major League Baseball draft. So he got a massive signing bonus, and there was also like a lot of people who needed to make sure that his transition from college to the minors to the majors was as smooth as possible, right? A lot of people were invested in it, and even then, he still had some issues that he had to work around in terms of like financial stuff and everything like that. And it was to give people a glimpse of what it's like to be a minor league baseball player going through the current lockout and being cut off from their number one way of being able to make money, because it's safe to say the lockout ended some careers. You know what I mean? I don't think that's too outside of the realm of possibility. It made there's umpteenth amount of people, especially if you walk. I live in Houston, right? So if you walk around Houston, there's plenty of dudes who used to play high level ball in a lot of different sports at a lot of different levels. It's just the perks of living in a massive city like this. If you walk around and you hang out long enough, you will meet famous people. You will meet people who played minor league ball, not only in baseball, but were able to get to like the G League and play in the NBA and stuff like that. And they'll tell you they got to a point where they realize like, hey man, like I'm just kind of like running into a wall, and I've reached the limitations of my abilities, and it makes them move on to something else. Now, do I agree with that? Because, you know, as a person with very little athletic talent who still continues to play sports, I think, you know, you got to play until the wheels come off, because at some point you're not going to be able to ever play again. And some people choose to not ever play again, which I can't relate to. That's just me, though. Like, once again, usually that comes from a person who doesn't have enough talent to be able to be like, you know what, I think I'm going to step away from the situation. But yeah, that's best of the best for this week. Mark Appel finally getting a chance to make his MLB debut in the bigs. And not only that, he got a strikeout in his first appearance as well. And that brings us up to our first of 2 hydration breaks for this episode of the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we don't judge how you drink as long as it's a liquid that can be digested by human beings without killing them, whether that be a brown liquid that just so happens to come out of a bottle labeled Jack Daniels, or possibly an even fancier scotch if you're one of those fancy people out there, or if it's a clear liquor that also comes out of a liquor bottle. You do you. It is a Tuesday. It is the day after 4th of July, so I have a strange feeling a lot of y'all need to hydrate. I'll be hydrating a little bit as well, and then of course I'll be drinking the drink that I drink all the time because I have a crippling addiction to it, but I will not mention on this show because that's not how you get sponsorships, ladies and gentlemen. So we take our first of 2 hydration breaks. I'll leave you with some jams from the person who has provided all the music for this show and was kind enough to let me use it. And that would be Christina Gukas. Shout out to her for letting us get down with her music. This is Humble Beliefs by Christina Gukas right here on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. I'll be back in 3 minutes and 8 seconds. And we're back here live on the Broke Boys Sports Podcast. My name is Ashton Gene Lewis, and as you can see here, social media handles. By the way, my Instagram handle is my same name on TikTok. Your boy trying to get to 1,000 followers so he can go live and, find another way for people to watch him talk into a microphone so I can enjoy the sound of my own voice. Anyway, worst of the worst, like we follow up with best of the best, ladies and gents. I'd be remiss if we didn't have a segment called Worst of the Worst like we do every single week. Worst of the worst. This one is just an update on the shitty situation going on with Brittney Griner. So, if you're not familiar, Brittney Griner is considered to be, if not the best, top 3 in the world in terms of women's centers in basketball. And spends her off, technically it is her off season. There's no off season for the ladies when it comes to women's basketball because of money and stuff like that. But she spends her off season in Russia playing for one of the Euro League teams where she makes a shit ton of money. I think she makes like almost double what she makes in the WNBA, but the benefit of the WNBA is that she plays at home in their off, all that kind of stuff like that. She was she's currently in a Russian prison after an incident where they searched her luggage and found hash oil. Most people at this point are expecting a conviction, especially considering the way that the Russian courts work. I listened to an episode of Conduct Detrimental, which is a legal podcast by Dan Lust. If you're a guy who pays attention or watches Barry on Deck on a regular basis, I think he references and had Dan Lust on his podcast. Dan is a big time important actual lawyer in real life, and then on top of that talks about sports law on a regular basis. By the way, if you're in the chat, hit me up with questions or anything you have, or questions, reactions, thoughts on any of the subjects that we hit on throughout the course of this show. But nonetheless, I would be remiss. I was listening to the I Am Athlete podcast, which, by the way, oh my god, whoo boy, I can only do that. I try not to bang on people's podcasts, especially since I am like the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to podcasting as a whole. But the I Am Athlete podcast, it does not make sense how that show is so popular. I listen to the Pivot podcast now, which has Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Channing Crowder on it. I like to listen to Ryan Clark a ton. I think he's a brilliant mind when it comes to sports media, and he and I don't see life eye to eye on a regular basis. That's why he's more successful than me, right? Same thing with Fred Taylor. Fred Taylor kind of sus sometimes in the things that he says. Also, they are grown men who actively say pause on a regular basis, and I find that to be the most childish thing ever. I find it to literally be like one of the most childish things that a grown-ass man can do. Anyway, I listened to the I Am Athlete podcast. They had Carrie Champion on there, and that's the only reason I listened to the episode. It's really tough when Brandon Marshall starts talking over his guests, which happens every single episode. So if you like hearing the host more than the super important interview that they brought on to have a conversation with and spark conversation with, the I Am Athlete podcast is for you if you like to hear Brandon Marshall's voice. They have Pac-Man Jones and Swaggy P as one of the co-hosts as well, and they really struggle with also not talking over their guest. Carrie Champion was on there, and she asked them all, like, when's the last time they posted about Brittney Griner? And I realized, I think I've talked about Brittney Griner like 3 or 4 times since we found out that she was detained in Russia, but, I'm going to do my part and make sure everybody fully understands the situation. A lot of people that really, truly just really truly out here being like, oh man, she broke the law, she deserved to go to jail, all that bullshit. Also don't like to talk about the actual global situation that goes along with this, about how Russia looks like they specifically targeted Brittney Griner because of her fame level and because of her connection to sport, and because of her connection to media in general in America. They knew that she would get headlines that she was arrested, and she was one of the people that they had direct access to because of her existence within the realm of sports. She has been detained and arrested in a Russian prison for quite some time at this point, but yeah, like I said before, most people are expecting a conviction, especially since they said some crazy number like less than 1% of people are acquitted of crimes in Russia, which honestly, as a person who has seen and done research into like the American justice system, the likelihood that every person that you bring to court is being accused of a crime and they committed that crime without a shadow of a doubt is super wild for a person to say. Like, that's insane. That means that the cops in Russia are basically flawless in terms of assessing crime. Likelihood of that being the case, you tell me. You tell me. Anyway, that being said, there's a lot of stuff going around. Of course, Russia's already made what their demands are known. They want to trade Brittney Griner's freedom for the freedom of a person who is in Russian prison, who sponsored terrorism in multiple countries and has been convicted and jailed here in America for it. So that seems, it's so wild that will be the trade for Brittney Griner. Like, Brittney Griner, a person who is being put in jail for smoking or having hash oil to be able to do dabs, right? Like, that's what hash oil is for. I think, let me know, stoners, let me know. Hash oil sounds like it is what is utilized before dabs or a dab rig is introduced, kind of deal. Being like, yeah, we're going to trade her for an actual fucking terrorist. Like, that's wild. If you put that in the ESPN trade machine, I don't think that trade goes through. But nonetheless, she is in prison. Her trial resumes on Thursday. At this point, people are expecting a conviction, especially since there's been, like, no movement from the U.S. government to approve that trade. So, like, they want the headline of being like, Brittney Griner's going to jail for 10 years. They want that to be the headline that comes out because at this point they're charging towards it. I've listened to a sports media podcast, sports business podcast, which you should listen to. Make sure you drink your coffee beforehand. That shit is hard to listen to, but it is it's information dense, entertainment level super low. But it is very information dense. They had a conversation with somebody who's familiar with Russian law, and he was basically like, yeah, it's all but a done deal that she's going to get convicted. And I think that the maximum penalty is like 10 years or some shit like that. So she could be in jail for the remainder of her basketball career and not be back in America for a decade, which is wild to think about, especially considering the conditions that most people consider like Russian prisons to be in, or just prisons in America. Like, think about that. And it being worse because Brittney Griner is like twice the size of the average human being. And I doubt they're going to be, like, there's no prison that actively tries to treat its prisoners well, right? Especially if you believe the fact that everybody in prison is convicted of a crime that is bad. That doesn't go that way. Anyway, the worst of the worst segment for this week was an update on Brittney Griner. And as you can tell, things are looking bleak. Let's go to our next segment called About a Week Ago, where we have a discussion about how quickly a subject or a story has changed in just the span of a singular week. Last week, we were talking about Kyrie Irving trade destinations. This week, we focused on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant trade destinations. If you have not heard, I guess you live under a rock or don't actually like sports, or maybe you just hate basketball. There are two guys who play for the Brooklyn Nets. They're two of the best players on the face of the planet. One of them is seemingly difficult to work with based off what happened the last two places that he went to. Well, really the last three. Kyrie Irving, when he was at the Cavs by himself, wasn't a ton. Like, when he was with Cleveland by himself, he was cool about it. When he was when he eventually moved on to be with the Celtics by himself after having LeBron James come back and winning the championship with him, moving on to play for the Celtics, seemingly set that franchise back a couple of years because of the kind of damage and strife he created between the young players, whatever you may have to say about that, and then eventually moving on to the Brooklyn Nets, where he didn't play vast majority of his time there. I think he played like less than 50% of the games that he was available, that he was slotted or available to be able to play for. Some of that is due to injuries. Some of that is due to the fact that the NBA season was cut short. He did not go to the bubble to be able to play. And then, of course, a good chunk of that is also due to the fact that this past season he chose not to be vaccinated and then subsequently was not allowed to play by the rules of the NBA, despite the situation where he made a legitimate point about the stupidity of the laws in New York for going into the arena, not having to wear a mask as a spectator, but also being if you're an NBA player, you have to wear a mask while you're on the sideline. I felt like that was a pretty good point. He also talked about like he bought a ticket, went into the game, and was directly behind the Knicks bench or behind the Nets bench, and then went into the Nets locker room and was able to go in there without a mask on because he bought a ticket and was a spectator. So, That was actually a very good point. And then I think subsequently, like a couple weeks later, they finally passed something that they had been waiting on for a while, which was like this exemption for entertainers to not have to wear a mask inside of performance spaces or whatever it may be. But yeah, last week we were talking about Kyrie Irving trade destinations, and this week we're talking about how Kevin Durant, with 4 years left on his deal, wants to be traded away to another team, seemingly after Kyrie Irving opted into his current deal to set himself up for a sign and trade situation. Kevin Durant probably, and this brings up the question, like the whole getting James Harden thing, was that a part of an attempt to replace Kyrie Irving? That's like legitimately a question we have to ask ourselves. Like, was the whole James Harden thing to set up a person who's easier to work with for Kevin Durant? Because as of right now, there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it as Kyrie Irving opting into his contract for the ability to pull off a sign and trade, which is like a real thing, legitimately a real thing that could happen here still, even though it's a little bit more difficult now because of what the Nets don't have really much to trade away, because they traded away draft picks to get Royce O'Neal, which is really weird. But they're in a situation to be able to do that. And then the other situation is that now Kevin Durant like sees Kyrie Irving about to leave, and he's trying to leave as well because he doesn't want to be on the team unless he knows that there's going to be another superstar to help him in dire situations, help him be able to pull off stuff like get one shot away from being able to beat the eventual reigning NBA champions in the Milwaukee Bucks. That could legitimately happen, right? That's like a real thing that could happen for people. But for the most part, it comes off like, oh man, he came into the room, now I'm trying to leave the room as soon as possible. Especially considering what happened last season, where not only did they barely make it to the playoffs because they had a situation towards the end of the season where they kind of fell off a little bit and there wasn't really anybody picking up the slack. And if you also look at the rest of the roster, I think that's reason enough to move on to something else as well. I would also like to point out this is all I remember this one story when they first showed up to Brooklyn. And everybody was wondering, like, why didn't they go to the Knicks? The Knicks is the bigger market. The Knicks is this. The Knicks is that. And it's like, I mean, like, look at the Knicks. Like, look at the Knicks for half a second. But the thing that came up to me in my mind is thinking back to when Kenny Atkinson was trying to implement the system that made the Nets the landing spot that was attractive to Durant and Kyrie, to get all those role players to a high level to where they could get to the playoffs without having a superstar, which is what the Nets did before KD and Kyrie got there, right? Like, a lot of people like to forget that. D'Angelo Russell had like a resurgence of his career and then got traded away to the Timberwolves, lest we forget. Then got hurt, right? That happened. I mean, D'Angelo Russell's been on a journey, a basketball journey, if you will, thinking about where he was when he was with the Lakers and then, going to Summer League with Magic Johnson and then getting traded away to another team. He went to Summer League with Magic Johnson to scout the new young players and then got traded away, I think, like the following week or something like that to Brooklyn, where at the time it was a wasteland for basketball. Him and Brook Lopez were out there just chunking shots up. No, but I think about that, and I'm like, Kenny Atkinson had this whole system to where it got the Nets to where everybody was hustling on the same level. Everybody was at the same fitness level or surpassing their previous fitness level where they were working on skills and fundamental stuff, and then two superstars show up, and they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. And then it broke down the system, because the whole point of the system is for everybody to buy in on the struggle, and that we all struggle together so that when tough times come up throughout the course of the season, we're not divided on how to attack it. We know that the grind is what we have to embrace to be able to get to the next level. And I'm not stupid enough to sit here and talk about Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving as not being grinders. Like, you'd have to be stupid to see the level of skill that both of those guys have and sit there and be like, oh, they just got that overnight and like magically appeared one day and were able to dribble like that, and were able to score like that, and were able to have focus and pass like that. That's the grind. They've already done it, right? But I will point out that subsequently was like the huge moment where a lot of the role players that they had built up, we all saw it, like they got traded away, right, to get Kyrie Irving, right? And the guy who basically survived was like Nick Claxton, because he was the big man that hustled up and down the court, which is the number one thing that most people are looking. Like, most people want rim runners, not necessarily rim protectors, because sometimes rim protector means a little bit slow, but rim runners are people who are, large people who run up and down the court and hustle hard as fuck. That's a real thing. That is that I remember that moment, and I look at what the team is now, and I look at the roster, and I'm like, wow, it's emaciated from where it used to be. Like they were dependent upon LaMarcus Aldridge, who they couldn't have predicted, but he had like a heart murmur situation where he had to step away from the game, and he came back this year. Blake Griffin, who the last 3 years that he was with the Detroit Pistons, he was hurt and it finally caught up to him, right? Like he's nowhere near the basketball player that he used to be because of, like he's been playing at an elite level for such a long time. He doesn't have the juice left as far as we know as of right now, right? The whole Joe Smith thing, where his ankle gets hopefully he's going to be back this upcoming season, but to see his ankle get that damaged to the point where it needs surgery is wild to think about. Same thing where you're talking about Seth Curry coming into the situation and getting drafted, right? Like that's huge. Their team has been torn down, but it wasn't like they replaced the players that they lost, the skill players and the hustle players and the role players that they lost, with people that were worth having that done with, right? And so that puts more emphasis and more pressure on Kyrie and Kevin Durant to go out there and make it happen. Like that puts so much pressure on those guys to go out there and make it happen every single night, because they can't depend on a role player to go out there and drop 30, get a triple-double, and make a big game change, or have a game-changing type game where they carry the squad. And that is damaging. That is deeply damaging overall for a lot of players and a lot of teams. Anyway, that's how vicious this circle has been. Because when you have, like, legitimately, they can't make what they have work. They can't make what they have now work to be a title contender. There's no question about that. Technically, Kevin Durant, technically Kyrie Irving are both still signed to the Brooklyn Nets, but they've both voiced opinions on how they don't want to be there anymore. And you know how it goes. If you want to think about the future, you let the current superstars go so that you can go for the future superstar later on down the road, because you showed that when it was over, you addressed that it was over for those guys being there, and you made it possible for them to move on. Despite the fact that, a lot of people really, really are hung up on this whole idea of like superstars get to do whatever they want in the NBA, and they don't like that for some reason. Well, when you provide skill and service that nobody else does, you get to call the shots. That's how the world works. That's how business works, right? Everybody likes to talk about business all the time. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving provide skills and abilities and wins and methods for being able to win and access to a certain level of the NBA that other players do not. And so they command a lot more control over where they exist and where they play basketball. And they no longer want to play for the Brooklyn Nets. Moving on, our segment next, We Talking Money or We Talking Money, where we talk about, money. Today's price, at least $125 million. Ice Cube has a partnership contract with Black America Institute, which is an organization that helps small black-owned businesses in not even time of need, but also helps them like expand their businesses, because Ice Cube, despite some of the things that he's been posting on social media, has made a big effort, and you saw it towards the end of the Donald Trump presidency, where he tried to have a meeting with Donald Trump about getting money into the black community in terms of like getting money to black businesses overall so that they can continue to be successful, especially in dire times like a global pandemic, to make sure that black businesses can stay open. Ice Cube is now reaching out and done this with the NFL. He has gotten at least $125 million allocated to the support of black businesses. This is massively important, especially considering the NFL is a business that many could argue is a black business, despite the people in positions of power like ownership and commissionership and everything like that. It is a black business because not only is a vast majority of its customer base black, but the vast majority of the people who make the NFL, the organization that it is, are black. They are powered. The NFL is powered by black people. Therefore, you could say it is a black business. Ice Cube, of course, going out there giving oh, look at that. Nick. Oh, this is Nick on YouTube. Anyway, they're a black business. I'll read that comment in a second. But yeah, this is a black powered business, right? Like that's a huge, huge deal. And Ice Cube, a person that if you, like there's so many people who like just fundamentally are going to have one hell of a time trying to understand who Ice Cube is, right? We talked about the kind of stuff that he's been posting on social media, some of it comes off like Nation of Islam type stuff. Some of it also comes off like, once again, like Ice Cube, man, who basically perfected the concept of gangster rap. One of the most iconic hip hop groups, the lead of one of the most iconic hip hop groups of all time, who would go on to make some of the most iconic movies in black cinema, in general, really American cinema, because like, I don't know how you can be like, at this point, like, how can you be an American and not have watched Friday, right? Like Friday after next Friday. I get if you haven't watched the sequels, but the original Friday is probably one of the greatest movies in American cinema ever, right? For him to be able to direct and star in that film, and to now be a person pushing, using his influence to not only organize an entire sports league in the Big Three, but on top of that, also taking the time and the energy to make shit happen in terms of helping other people be like him. You know what I mean? Helping pave the way for other black people, knowing and understanding the world that we live in now makes it even more difficult for people to be able to gain generational wealth, trying to find a way for businesses that are owned by black people, which have historically not had a ton of help or success overall, finding a way for them to be successful. And if that means giving them a couple $1 million or finding a way to get them thousands of dollars to keep their doors open so that they can continue to serve customers and show the great products that they're able to make, then so be it. That's wild. Like, a guy who could be easily just like retired and chilling and stuff like that is going out of his way to try and help his people. You know what I mean? Help the people that he comes from, knowing that there are people who all they need is a chance, and everybody else is trying to prevent them from getting a fair shake at it. And he's trying to make sure that his people get a fair shake at it. I gotta respect it, despite all the things I disagree with in terms of like Ice Cube's perspective on the world. Once again, that's why he's successful and I'm not, right? But yeah, that's just something. We got a comment here on YouTube from Nick Micro. About to walk into work, saw you were live, finally get to catch you and show some love. Have a great night, bro. Let me know what you think about KD and a surprise trade to Philly with Harden and his new deal. So unless they've locked it up, let me check real quick. Let me check it, because it's technically not like official, right? Like the James Harden deal is not official. But let's check the old Twitter sphere here. He went to go meet with James Harden went to go meet with. Yeah. See, look, this is Bleacher Report 6 hours ago. James Harden and the Sixers could agree to a new contract as soon as the next 24 hours. This is per Woj. Shout out Woj and Shams. They probably slept a combined 5 hours. Over under 5 combined hours of sleep between Shams and Woj. Put it in the chat what you got, over under. 5 seems like a lot, but especially between the two of them. I'm not going to lie. If you've ever heard those podcasts, so they're probably going to do it. This is probably some of the more interesting stuff. If you ever want an idea of how, because Shams and Woj have done multiple podcasts that are like this, I don't know if they have them labeled this way, but there are like multiple podcasts where people have asked Shams and Woj to detail how they became who they are, and they've been very open about how they got to this point. Like Shams talked about when he was in high school, emailing NFL front office executives like about picks and for like just to have a conversation about basketball, and was doing that for like every team across the league. Was just like a kid in high school doing it. I'm not even joking, like straight up. But yeah, that they've Woj has one where he does that as well. Shams has one where he does it multiple. I've heard them do it multiple times, so check it out. Anyway, there's no deal between Harden and the Sixers yet. I was wondering like if it had just dropped while we were on air or something like that. Harden went to go visit Philly Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, and there hasn't been anything done. But he's talking about, let me know what I think about KD and a surprise trade to Philly surprise trade to Philly with Harden and his new deal. So there has been rumors, not rumors, but somebody reported that Joel Embiid asked the Sixers front office to do everything in their power to get Kevin Durant on the squad because, quite frankly, if they can't do it with James Harden, even though James Harden is obviously very hobbled at this point because of an infinitely hurt hamstring injury type shit, they can't do it with James Harden, Joel Embiid, now PJ Tucker. There's no way that Philly can win a championship, and we all got to blow it up. So that would be dope to see. One, because I want, like, unlike most people from Houston, I want James Harden to win a championship because I feel like he gave his best years to this team, and the reason that he has collapsed so much in the playoffs is because of the energy he's had to expend to get the team to where they are in the playoffs at those moments. And there have been I put the onus on other people around him to step up and do things. That's my number one thing. But yeah, that's my number one thing with the whole James Harden thing. Also, I've never questioned like James Harden's hustle because I believe that you can go to the strip club and work out harder than your teammates and also just like be better than them. And I think James Harden has been better than like 90% of the teammates he's been on a team with. And the ones that he hasn't been better than are like all-time greats in NBA history, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I kind of, that would be wild and outlandish to me, but it would be the ultimate all-in move for Philly because one, it would hurt the Brooklyn Nets and it would basically ensure that they have zero chance of being able to do anything the following year, even if they have Kyrie Irving. That would also be the perfect 2.5 star formula that we've seen in years past work, right? Like Kevin Durant and Joel Embiid, who don't operate in the same spaces on the floor, which is the important part. That was the thing that really messed up the Heatles for a second when they had D Wade and LeBron James, because they played basketball so similarly to a certain degree that they were always occupying the same spaces on the court, so they could never really get like that perfect sync going because they all couldn't get to where they wanted to be, which is why there was a lot of key moments where all three of them were on the court. Chris Bosh, D Wade, and LeBron James were all on the court at the same time, but they would basically be like only two of you out there at the same time kind of deal. That would be cool to see. Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid. Kevin Durant, the ultimate, I defend everything 1 through 5. Joel Embiid, the ultimate, like, I'm the ultimate big man in basketball, right? Other than Nikola Jokic on a good day. I would also love to see Kevin Durant go to the Denver Nuggets, but if he's going to disrupt their player development system that they have going on, I do not want that to happen. The only reason I'm cool with the Sixers trade going down is because the Sixers don't necessarily have like a player development thing going on right now, right? They got Tyrese Maxey balling out of control coming off last season, right? Everybody else is a vet or a vet from some other location in the NBA, right? Like you talk about Danny Green, like he's a vet that they signed on for the playoffs, and he kind of went out there and did his thing defensively or whatever, but then kind of disappeared when it came to the 3-point shooting stuff. And if that's going to be the case, that's going to be the case. But I would love to see Kevin Durant go to the Denver Nuggets. That's just me though. The Sixers thing is cool though. I can get down with that. It could be a lot worse. Moving on to our next segment, media suggestions, where I tell you about something, even though I've been dropping podcasts that I've been listening to throughout the course of the show. This is a segment where I tell you something that happened or something that I heard, listened to, read in sports media that I think you should check out. There's Carl Lawson, who is the head coach for... Oh, wow, I didn't put it on there. My bad, guys. Sorry, everyone. There's Carl Lawson, who's the head coach of the Duke women's basketball team, that had a great speech that she gave to her kids, or gave to her young ladies on her team about things being easy. Go viral. Definitely check it out. It's on the Duke women's basketball Twitter account. It's on, if you just type in Carl Lawson on Instagram and on Facebook or on the Google's machines or on Twitter, it will come up. I promise you that. It's on Slam, the Twitter account. Really, really good conversation. It's something that's common sense, but sometimes you got to hear somebody say it in a cool manner, and Carl Lawson does it. Moving on. We got, that was all I got for media suggestions. Oh, my bad. The other thing I have for media suggestions, ESPN Daily, which is a daily podcast released by ESPN. What do you know? Who'd have thought? It had an episode called Rob Manfred Doesn't Hate Baseball. That's the title of it. Definitely go check it out. It's about Rob Manfred's backstory, the actual MLB strike, and what Rob Manfred did and the reasoning behind it. Also, there's a giant piece where somebody from ESPN interviewed Rob Manfred and wrote about like that's the backbone of the episode, right? It's about the piece and what's in it. You should definitely go check it out, especially if you're a baseball guy. I'm not necessarily a big baseball person, but I do find that whole dynamic of who's the most hated commissioner in all of sports very, very intriguing, because it seems like Rob Manfred is leading the charge. There's a lot of people. I'm going to be honest with you, football fans. You guys seem like you're getting a little soft on Roger Goodell. You know what I mean? You guys seem like you're getting a little bit soft. Getting a little soft. We move on to our final segment of the show. It's called What's Going On? We just talk about what's going on in sports. So we start off with on a pretty sad note. Demaryius Thomas, who passed away a couple of months ago. I think we were all very shocked about it, especially since Demaryius Thomas was 33 years old, which is only 4 years older than I am right now, which is a terrifying concept in and of itself. Demaryius Thomas, there was either the Boston Medical Group that has done research on the multitude of brains of NFL players that have recently made themselves available. The study CTE as a whole, they diagnosed that yes, Demaryius Thomas did have CTE, but they also emphasize that CTE doesn't kill people. It is the side effects and what CTE forces you to do as a person. It does change your mood. It changes your whole mentality. It changes the way you approach life, and I think that's something that we can. They said that he was in stage 2 of CTE, and this is a quote from his mother, from Demaryius Thomas's mom. His mood would change, and he would also isolate himself from sometimes. Thomas's mother, Katina Stuckley Smith, told ABC. He was like, Mom, I don't know what's going on in my body. I got to get myself together. And he said, I don't feel like myself anymore. Also coinciding with the fact that Demaryius Thomas developed what is not considered to be a CTE symptom, but seizures, which a lot of people speculate is how Demaryius passed away in Georgia, that he had a seizure and it resulted in him injuring himself accidentally and his death subsequently afterwards. So, got a tweet coming in here. This is from Nick, who's, all over the place today. Just had to say this because I'm at work. Just think about it. Joel Embiid, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. 2010. Yeah, that's exactly what we just talked about. There we go. I'm glad we're all on the same page. But yeah, Demaryius Thomas diagnosed with CTE, which of course is a disease that as of now, I think due to the type of imaging that we have with MRIs, we can only see after the person has passed away. If you don't know what CTE is, it's basically like the scarring of your brain after repeated hits. It is the calcification of parts of your brain, which if you think about it, like if parts of your brain become so hard that you can't like actually actively use them anymore, which is what happens like when you get a scar or a cut or something, right? Like it hurts to be able to use that part of your body, but also it stiffens and it becomes difficult and less malleable. And it also could represent the death of tissue, right? And I think that's part of what CTE represents when it comes to what it does to the brain. That death of tissue changes who you are as a person. Like if you chop off half of somebody's brain, they are a different person. If you've ever taken a psychology class, whether it be AP or not, I'm sure you've all come across that but the study that was done of the man who took like the metal pipe to the brain, and it pierced his frontal lobe, if I'm not mistaken, but he was able to survive. But the ramifications of his survival was that he was like a different person. Like he had a totally different personality. He was like really irritable, which I would be pretty irritable too if there was like a metal piece of, like a metal pipe had gone through my brain, kind of deal like that. But it was basically like the removal of the portions of his brain turned him into a different person. And you can say the same thing about CTE depending upon where those scars develop. And also Demaryius Thomas is now apparently one of over 300 people who have come up positive for CTE retroactively after a football career, which of course I'm sure terrifies every single football player on the planet, and also every single football mom on the planet, because once again, it's not like Demaryius Thomas got all that brain damage from going to the NFL. It was years. In Demaryius's case, he played until he was 32, so that's decades of brain damage, just like most players in the NFL, right? Like most players in the NFL have played Pop Warner since they were a little kid. And you can talk about, oh man, they're too small to cause that kind of damage, but like to scale, that is a micro concussion. And they have that conversation about how your brain is kind of like a ball floating in water, and the micro concussions happen because your brain's sloshing around. And if there's not, like, your brain isn't fully immersed in water, right? Like your brain is half air, half blood, and it's kind of floating around in there. And if it's floating, that means it can bang up against your cranium, which is what happens when you get knocked unconscious, right? Like your brain smashes against your cranium so hard that it can no longer process, and you get like basically the reset button hit. That being a thing, that affects the way people perceive football. Anyway, moving on. Jalen Ferguson, linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. It has now come out that he passed away due to, if you didn't know, died. What is now being deemed an overdose of fentanyl and cocaine, which of course means that Jalen had some dirty cocaine, because it does not take a shit ton of fentanyl to kill a human being, regardless of how physically fit they are. Fentanyl takes like a ridiculously small amount of it to kill people, and Jalen got some bad cocaine, is what it looks like, and is no longer here with us or for his family, and that's terrible to hear, because that's somebody just trying to make a couple of extra dollars and risking lives in the process. So yeah, speaking of horrible things, Deshaun Watson's suspension is kind of looming over us as of right now. An independent arbitrator who is a federal fucking judge is deciding whether or not punishment is going to be adjudicated to Deshaun Watson as of right now. That this is, by the way, not determined by the league. So basically, this judge determines whether or not yes or no should he be punished, and then the punishment is adjudicated by the league itself and Roger Goodell. So basically, in the process of this investigation and all the information that has come out, there also started to be, for no reason whatsoever, they started to leak rumors about a potential 1-year suspension of Deshaun Watson, and kind of people's perspective and reactions to it. I think it's safe to say a lot of people, some people are going to think that that's not enough. Some people are going to think that's too much. And quite frankly, me personally, I would say that is not enough, man. The settlements are going out, and there's money being given out to these ladies for the damage that's been done to them. But I think we can all say that there's not a set amount of money that can be given to a person based off of, or not a set amount of money that can be given to a person in regards to the mental trauma that somebody imposes upon another person. And this is the only recourse that these ladies have gotten to, because there's no criminal cases that are being tried out of all of these. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust the camera here real quick. Let's see if we can fix that. There we go. But yeah, that I think that is a legitimate path that a lot of people go down, especially if you're a person that believes that in America people apologize with their money, not through suffering and not through punishment and stuff like that, which kind of is indicated by the fact that we give out like financial fines for speeding tickets and everything like that. But yeah, that's a real thing. But these rumors started coming out about a potential 1-year suspension, something that the Browns, in theory, based off of the way the contract was doled out for Deshaun Watson, they were fully prepared for. If you don't know, Deshaun Watson basically makes like a little bit over $1 million in the first year of his contract with the Browns. So they're not losing 20-something million, but there's also the thing where the Browns would be hit with like a $40 million cap hit or something like that if Deshaun Watson is cut. So there's a little bit of give and take in that situation, right? Like there's no loss of money for the Browns this year, but also there's no good reason to cut Deshaun Watson other than like a moral thing that's going on. All this being done while Baker Mayfield has come out and said multiple times that he has moved on to the next phase of his life, and he's ready and pumped to play for whatever his new team is going to be. Baker is supposed to make $19 million this upcoming season, which makes him difficult to trade to other teams unless they just flat out don't have somebody they believe to be a starting quarterback, which is why the Seahawks are a team that a lot of people have keyed in on. Don't forget, and I feel like we got to keep pointing this out, Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback the Browns have had in 20 years, or has led the best team the Browns have had in the past 20 years, and he is the reason he, along with like Denzel Ward and a couple of other key draft picks, are the reason that the Browns are able to like go all in like they are right now. And to think that now we're in a situation where like Baker Mayfield is not even entertaining the possibility of showing up for training camp and being a Cleveland Brown, because he's in the quotes that people have been getting are from him in like Norman, Oklahoma at football camps and stuff like that. So with that being said, all eyes back on the brisket. Jacoby Brissett is back in the limelight yet again. I feel like Jacoby Brissett, but we call him the brisket. Jacoby Brissett has got one hell of a story to tell as like a football player. Like, his journey in the NFL is ridiculous. From the time that he spent as a starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts when they were looking for a head coach, from the time that he played, I think it was Thursday Night Football or Monday Night Football against the Houston Texans after not only Tom Brady being suspended, but then subsequently, I think it was 2 other quarterbacks getting hurt and forcing Jacoby Brissett to start for the Patriots versus the Texans, and then beating the Texans, a team that was said to be, at the time, one of the better defenses in the NFL, and he threw up like 30-something points on them. Yeah, like that. Now we're at that point. Oh, and by the way, I forgot. I need to add this part in as well. Tony Busby, who's the lawyer representing the ladies who are filing these civil suits against Deshaun Watson, is also now requesting the NFL investigation documents and videos of depositions that they took with people involved with the situation. I'm sure that that's all just to look for typos. That's not in an attempt to have it admitted into civil lawsuit court, right? Or to potentially use it as backing for reopening criminal cases after the grand jury decided there was no grounds to move forward. That's the only thing. It's only to check for typos, I'm sure. It's not to try and set up more legal ramifications for Deshaun Watson even after the NFL adjudicates everything that's going to go out. By the way, in positive NFL news, Terry McLaurin, who, if you haven't seen, there's a TikTok going around, there's a video clip going around about how Urban Meyer told Terry McLaurin that he actually was not good at all and he didn't deserve to play at Ohio State, even though one of the wide receiver coaches, which I think was Brian Hartline, identified that he should be a player for Ohio State and a wide receiver and thought he was going to be really good. He has now signed an extension with the largest signing bonus in NFL history for a wide receiver at $28 million. Urban Meyer's got a real eye for talent. Signs a deal through 2025. By the way, you should check out that TikTok because he said all of that before Terry McLaurin signed to Ohio State, which is interesting. 9 players have... this is moving on to high school sports. So since Arch Manning has announced he is going to go to the University of Texas, 9 players have committed to UT. Four of them are 4-stars, which is really good. You know, I'm not saying that the stars matter because at the end of the day, most of the time, the 3 stars are the guys that end up really panning out really well in the NFL and stuff like that. But Jonte Cook, who is one of the most sought-after wide receivers in the NFL, Derek Williams, Jonah Wilson, Connor Stroh, and then 4 other guys who were pretty high stars. There was a couple of 3 stars mixed in there as well, have committed to play for the University of Texas, and I think that is the ocean of talent that people are expecting to play against, or people expecting to see come and flood into the University of Texas, and that's the benefit of having Arch Manning there, because if you're an offensive player, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I think I'd be okay with playing with that guy. You know what I mean? And also, you know, having yourself associated with with the Manning legacy to a certain degree, because wherever the Manning kid is going to be at, Arch, who I've yet to hear speak a single word. I'm sure if I went and did some basic research on Arch Manning, I could be able to hear his voice. But whatever you have to say about him as a person, there's going to be a ton of cameras on him, regardless of if he fails or succeeds at the University of Texas. By the way, speaking of college football, it's been changed forever again. This is the 4th week in a row that college football has been changed forever. The ACC is moving to the pod scheduling format, so there are set rivalry games. Then there are 10 rotating games, 5 of which are home and 5 of which are away. 4 more leagues are planning to do this same exact system, including the other 7 major leagues that are already doing it. This is to open the door to bigger matchups and get access to different calibers of teams throughout the course of the country, right? It's a way to make more money. It's pretty obvious, right? The 5 home games and the 5 road games open up more contracts for those big-time super matchups like Alabama versus Texas, which is not currently a conference matchup in the SEC. It is just a game that Texas is going to be playing that is already sold out. No big deal. 4 more leagues are going to do the same, like I said. This is a better scheduling formatting in terms of getting bigger branded teams in your home stadiums or on the road where they have to pay you money. And it also opens up the door for different paths to get to the national championship game to set up stronger schedules, which the ACC has to do for their teams to be super successful, especially considering things are changing all of a sudden again. So we already know Oklahoma and UT are making their way to the SEC, which is a wild concept. But we also know now that USC and UCLA have been plotting and scheming behind the Pac-12's back to make their way to the Big Ten. And the alliance for the Pac-12 and all the other conferences that are outside looking in between the Big Ten and the SEC seemingly are reeling from this whole situation. I'm assuming they knew that USC and UCLA were shopping themselves out there. I mean, it's just one text message away, right? I'm assuming at some point they knew that their teams were basically trying to flip up on them, right? That has to be something that we assume that they knew. With that being said, we have to address the fact that USC and UCLA moving from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, one, is a huge blow to the Pac-12 in terms of money revenue being earned overall, but could open the door for some quote-unquote lower-level Division I football teams to make their way up to the quote-unquote power. See, now we're getting to the point where it's like, is it a Power 5 anymore, right? Which is something that people have been predicting for quite some time. Shout out to Split Zone Duo, one of the best college football podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis. But nonetheless, USC, UCLA moving on to the next phase. Moving on to the Big Ten is going to be massive. The map of what it looks like is hilarious, by the way. It's on Twitter, where it's like, yes, all these schools that are in a decent cluster next to each other, and then the other two schools that are on the other side of the country. Anyway... Yeah, there's a whole article written in the LA Times about why this move was made. Obviously, it was for money, the money being connected to the checks that are cut based off of the TV revenue rights. The Big Ten signed a 6-year, $3 billion TV revenue deal in comparison to the Pac-12, who signed a record-setting $3.2 billion TV deal, but it was over the course of 11 years, which subsequently will lose its value, and also the money is more spread out. And there is a lot of situations, you can look at the numbers on it, they were not getting they're not going to be getting as big a check as they're going to get from the Big Ten when the money is all said and done. USC, UCLA also going to the Big Ten could help them break up the pipeline of LA talent that is making its way to Eugene, Oregon, with the Oregon Ducks. We'll see if that has any effect on it, especially now they're going to have access to that Big Ten branding, that Big Ten money. And facts are, man, I feel like there's going to be a lot of road games to LA, especially considering LAX is a pretty accessible airport, if you haven't heard. A lot of people who are in the Big Ten who are going to be looking for a way to get out of those absolutely dreary parts of the Midwest kind of deal. I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to the times where potentially 2 times a year where they get to go to LA to face off against USC and UCLA. That's going to pan out and pay big dividends overall. Obviously, the big hit is to the Pac-12, and now they've got to look around for the next move that they can make. Front Office Sports, which is a really good and helpful Twitter account, pointed out how they believe there is a legit chance that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 could, combine together. Thus, by the way, assuming that's going to happen next week, and then college football will have changed forever again, right? As we go through this whole conference realignment deal, but this time instead of Missouri and Nebraska, who used to be pretty prominent names within the realm of college sports, we have the University of Texas and Oklahoma, USC, and UCLA. Those are quintessential backbone brands, especially when it comes to multiple sports, not just football, that are moving on to another conference that's going to make them more money. Yeah, that's huge. That's all I got on that. If you got anything about college football, college sports, hit me up. Hit me up on Twitter, FB_playbook. Put it in the chat, man. Put it in the chat. Other than that, we're moving on to our next story here. This one's wild, but also not surprising at all. For some reason, the U.S. Department of Justice is now having to pay FIFA, CONCACAF, and CONMEBOL, which is a different part of the world, $201 million for the fraud and scandal that went on. Not in 2015, but prior to 2015. if you pay attention to soccer in any way, shape, or form, you've known that FIFA's crooked for a really, really long time. FIFA basically got called out, busted, like in 4K. If you don't recall, there was an incident where there was an incident where like the TV market deal for the World Cup was never even put up for bid, and it just was like assigned to a TV network or a TV distribution network that one time. That's bribery, right? Like, that's exactly what we're talking about here. There have been multiple political officials in multiple countries. I think it's like over 50 different corporate entities in 20 different countries have been, brought up on charges for this, but then also, like, people have been sent to jail for it. Multiple political officials are going to jail over this, and not for, like, short amount of times. Like, I saw somebody going to jail for 9 years over this shit. I wonder how much money you got to take to go to jail for 9 years. You know what I mean? Sports marketing companies have admitted guilt in sending bribes to officials within FIFA to get broadcasting rights. And that explains so very much about FIFA as a whole. I have a strange feeling they've gotten a lot better at it, especially with the rise of, digital payments and, cryptocurrency. It's probably gotten a lot easier to get away with sending people bribes that are not traceable back to certain people. But nonetheless, all that shit from a couple of years ago with FIFA and basically them getting exposed in 4K in like the easiest manner possible. Somebody went up and they were like, hey, why did this go here? And then that question was like the one question, like, why did you assign that TV company to this game? And that was the one thing that the corrupt officials who were in charge of like the bribery circles were not prepared for. Somebody asking them a basic question about why a TV company got assigned to this, and then having to expose the documents, where they obviously were accepting bribes for games. Which is, by the way, in terms of the media companies, they're trying to get every edge they possibly can, because being able to host even being able to air some of these FIFA games is millions/billions of dollars. It's a lot of people's salary on the line, right? So to sit there and be like $1 million to some random dude to get this, to for sure be able to get this one FIFA game or get this one international game or get this one CONCACAF tournament, it's going to pay big dividends for us in the long run, because it'll, one, be able to keep our lights on, and then two, it will get them associated with the number one sport on the planet. So there is very little surprise that this level of corruption exists on this scale. I just don't understand why the Department of Justice for the United States of America has to pay for it. That's the thing I would try to read and understand. So if you understand it, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook, or hit me up in the chat right now. Speaking of soccer, before we get to NBA free agency, women's Euros. The women's Euros, I know, you're probably wondering, like, oh my God, no way is Ashton about to break down the women's Euros tournament. I'm like, no, I am not. No, I am not well versed enough on women's European soccer to be able to break down the Euros. I just wanted to point out, based off of what I saw in a CNN international article, they have more than doubled their ticket sales in a single year. They've more than doubled their ticket sales since the last time that they held the Euros. They sold like 250,000 tickets last time, and they're over 450,000 tickets sold so far, and they're continuing to sell more and more tickets. The first like 3 games of the tournament are sold out already, and they're being hosted in like Old Trafford, and they're being hosted in like major stadiums for the EPL, and they've already sold those out, which is wild to think about. Shout out to the ladies for going out there and doing their thing and getting the attention that they deserve, man. I like to see that, because when you see more and more stories like that, it takes the venom out of some of the things that these dudes that literally spend their whole lives trying to prove that women don't matter out, like, legitimately just removes any kind of verbiage that they can have to possibly say. And I love seeing stories like that, because like, honestly, didn't grow up seeing stuff like that, right? Because women didn't get the opportunity to go out there and play in the Euros and stuff like that. So, NBA free agency, we're going to go through each team and talk about the 1 or 2 really good signings that I thought were dope. But before we do that, I just want to point out the situation going on with Miles Bridges. If you have not seen this, it's actually kind of wild. Clearly a guy he's already tweeted about how he's asking for help. Kind of like screaming out for help, and, whatever. It's not whatever. That's actually the worst word I could have said in that situation. But he's basically come out like on Twitter and been like, I'm out here asking for help kind of deal, and nobody's giving it to him. So Miles Bridges has gone through quite a journey since the offseason began. The first thing that popped up, not the first thing that happened chronologically based off of the information that we have now. He posted on Instagram he had some lean and some weed. If you don't know, Miles Bridges is also a pretty decent rapper from what I've come to understand. Pretty good rapper, especially in the NBA. Well, the bar is low when you're talking about the NBA because it's like Dame Lillard and Shaquille O'Neal and pretty much everybody else, right? Like, nobody else has really been that good. But yeah, Miles Bridges got posted on Instagram like a cup of lean that was like very obviously a cup of lean. He tried to call it pink lemonade, and I was like, bro, I'm from Houston. That's lean. And also posted a blunt, which, I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, at this point, if you're surprised that NBA players and like professional athletes smoke weed, that's you. That's a personal choice that you're making for some reason. And I'll understand why. Professional athletes be out there hurt all the time. IG post from his mother, and then there was an IG post from the mother of his children that has come out and said that he gave her in an attack, which you can only assume is one of many attacks that have happened, especially when it comes to domestic violence. Very rarely do you hear about the first time it's ever happened is the big incident, right? It's the little things that lead up to it. So she had a concussion. She broke her nose and other things as well. She had like bruised ribs and stuff like that. The Hornets have now rescinded their qualifying offer, which was basically their qualifying offer is like anybody that tries to pick up Miles Bridges, we retain the right to be able to try and match the offer, which of course means more money for Miles Bridges, right? Because if the Hornets are going to send out if the Hornets send out a qualifying offer, somebody sends out like a low ball offer, they'll just match it. The only way to get the Hornets off of their qualifying offer is to essentially overpay for Miles Bridges. But that won't be a concern anymore, especially considering he's been charged with domestic violence. He's also been arrested and is out on bail now. So I don't think he'll have to be worried about his contract situation for too much longer, especially considering he doesn't have one. It doesn't look like he's going to get one again anytime soon. Trades that have gone on so far, trade situations so far. The only actual trade, there's two of them that are of note. Actually, it's three of them. Rudy Gobert gets traded to the Timberwolves. They create the Tower of Power with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert statistically been proven to be one of the greatest defenders in the history of the NBA, and then subsequently in the playoffs looks pedestrian. So how you take that however you want to. It is a massive talent upgrade for the Minnesota Timberwolves, especially considering what we all say about Karl Anthony Towns when he's in the paint playing defense. That photo of him trying to back down DeMarcus Cousins, who's got his face absolutely stone-faced, that we've basically been using to define the entirety of Karl Anthony Towns and what level of strength he has as a basketball player for 4 years now? Rudy Gobert being added and being an additional piece in terms of like being the ultimate rim protector currently in the NBA is going to be massive for the Timberwolves on the defensive front. The Timberwolves gave up 4 first-rounders, which is the absolute maximum number of first-rounders they can give up because of the rule where the origin of this. The guy who used to be the general manager for the Chicago Bulls when MJ was there used to have a really nasty habit of like trading away draft picks because he didn't see the value in picking up rookies. He only saw the value in getting vets that are proven people and then underpaying for them, a la Scottie Pippen. But yeah, they made a rule in the NBA where you can't trade further than 4 years out draft pick wise. So the 4 draft picks, they got four first round draft picks of the Timberwolves. They got Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Bolmaro, who by the way never seen him play a single second in the NBA. And then also for shout out to Walker Kessler, who was a Minnesota Timberwolves for 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Welcome to the business that is basketball, buddy. Anyway, he is getting traded to Utah, which that's a tough one. To go from Minnesota to Salt Lake City, Utah. Ugh. Good luck out there, young man. But yeah, that is what they traded to get Rudy Gobert. So Many would say that is what we call an all-in move. I guess we're going to find out. The Jazz now have 6 first-rounders after trading away Royce O'Neal, who they traded away to the Brooklyn Nets. Royce O'Neal is coming off, 6th man of the year, right? 6th man of the year 2 years ago. But yeah, Malcolm Brogdon also got traded to the Celtics. The biggest thing with Malcolm is, of course, the injury concerns that have been an issue forever since he started playing in the NBA, but him being there is going to be massive in terms of, one, alleviating the point guard duties from the other guys who go out there who, Marcus Smart is a point guard. Like, there's no question about that whatsoever. But having more point guards can't be the worst thing that can happen to your team. And also, Malcolm Brogdon has a history of being able to score baskets, which is something that if you didn't watch the NBA Finals, the Celtics really could have used. It helps warp defenses, especially since nobody can cheat off of another person. They can go out there and do their thing. Moving on. Here's some free agency stuff that I thought was important to talk about. The Hawks signed Aaron Holiday. I'm not going to talk about that. The Brooklyn Nets, couple of key signings for them. Believe it or not, Nick Claxton, who has been massive for them as a basketball player in terms of his ability to play defense in the paint, and on top of that, moving, like I said before earlier in the show, he's a rim runner. He's returning on a 2-year deal, which is whenever I see anything less than 2 years, I think very tradable. Like, very tradable deal, right? Like, they could trade Nick Claxton away right now if they needed to, which is probably why they signed him to that deal. Patty Mills is also returning on a 2-year deal, which means that they'll become free agents at the same exact time. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with why they signed those deals. TJ Warren is leaving the Pacers to sign with the Brooklyn Nets on a 1-year deal. And this is all, like, very seemingly we packing it up type stuff, right? Like, this is all kind of like we are getting ready for, we're making every contract as immovable as possible, because as of right now, we are living in a world where we're not going to have Kyrie or Kevin Durant on this team. And so we need to have all the players who are good on our team available for trade and make their deals as viable as possible. And honestly, a 2-year deal is one of the most trade worthy deals in the NBA, especially if you can get that person before the second year of that deal starts. That first year, you trade them away. You trade them away in that first year. That first year gives you all the time to work out an extension or whatever. But that second year deal runs around, and now they become the most tradable asset on your team because they only have 1 year. They have 1 deal left, or 1 year left on the deal that you already signed, and it's basically a prove it to me kind of thing that you can work on. But yeah, both of those guys are on 2-year deals. Moving on, the Hornets haven't done anything that's like super crazy impressive to me. Zach LaVine is coming back on a 5-year max deal. Shout out to him, especially considering he escaped Minnesota. I always give you credit for that. Goran Dragic, the Dragon himself, is back for a 1-year deal. Andre Drummond is back as well. I'd like to point that out. Darius Garland, shout out to that random NBA player that I mentioned on this show 2 years ago, and a lot of people looked at me like wild-eyed, and I was like, no, Darius Garland's got the juice, bro. Like, straight up. It's very clear. He signed a 5-year extension. Shout out to him. Ricky Rubio coming back, by the way, on a 3-year deal to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Shout out to him. Robin Lopez still in the game, baby. 1 more year for him. JaVale McGee, unstoppable basketball player, JaVale McGee, 3-year deal. Where JaVale goes, wins usually follow. I know it's really weird to say that, but it's kind of true at this point. For whatever, Shaquille O'Neal used to bang on him a ton, but JaVale McGee, has proven in years past to be an extremely useful basketball player for a lot of people, man. But anyway, Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, 5-year deal. That big money, big money, baby. Shout out to the king of the big men himself in the NBA right now. 5-year extension, well deserved. Every single dollar he deserves in his bank account. As we've been waiting on that one for a while, man. And hopefully, with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. coming back this upcoming season, they can get back to their winning ways without having Nikola Jokic have to carry the entire state of Colorado on his back. Bruce Brown, sneaky addition there. From the Brooklyn Nets. Key defender and a lot of versatility. Also showed a lot of good passing ability when he was playing for the Nets when their offense was kind of stagnant. Moving on, I got Marvin Bagley III, which is a really... I don't know how he feels about signing with the Detroit Pistons. I'm sure he's going to tell you he's feeling ecstatic about it. But the fact of the matter is Marvin Bagley III has really been struggling just in general to get to a place where he feels like he's wanted, because a lot of years when he was with the Kings, he was like the first name out of people's mouths when it came to trade stuff, but now he's signed with the Pistons. The Golden State Warriors, huge signing for them in my opinion. Dante DiVincenzo agreeing to a 2-year deal, another shooter for the Warriors to go out there and stretch the floor for him, formerly from the Milwaukee Bucks, who traded him away right before the trade deadline last year for some reason. He was coming off a torn ACL, and as a lot of people have speculated and talked about, like, your leg becomes functional after that 1-year period of rehabbing and stuff like that, or that 7-month period of rehabbing and stuff like that, but that second year is when you really feel like you can kind of get back to where you used to be. Kevon Looney, absolutely massive for the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs, massive defensive presence, even though what he did on offense was like almost non-existent. What he did on defense was invaluable, and that's why he's an NBA champ. Moving on. The Rockets re-signed one person. The Pacers re-signed Jalen Smith to a 2-year deal. Nicholas Batum, heavily underrated re-signing situation. Not only is Nicholas really valuable on offense, but his ability to add to the the group of Clippers players that are around that 6'7", 6'6" range that makes them universally switchable, I think is underrated. Batum as a shooter has been really good for a really, really long time, and the consistency may be waning, but the fact of the matter is like Batum has clearly made his impression on the Clippers, and him signing that 2-year deal is going to be clutch. Also, the Clippers getting John Wall to sign to a deal of the same length, which means that Batum and Wall, who are pretty up there in age vets, are going to become free agents at the same time, which I'm assuming is to help not only if they need to re-sign them to bigger deals, but also make sure that both of those guys can walk without them having an issue in the next couple of seasons, because there's a lot of money that's going to come due for the Clippers, and they got to figure out what they're going to do about having all these really good basketball players but not having any wins or playoff wins to show for it, or even finals appearances to show for it. The LA Lakers, the only person I pointed out that they're signing Lonnie Walker, and it's because this is an early prediction. I think Lonnie Walker is the new whipping boy for the LA Lakers fans. He's going to be the person that they blame for all their issues. Anyway, moving on. John Morant, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, he's really good at basketball. He signed a 5-year max extension with the Memphis Grizzlies. That was never really up in the air, but now he's getting that moolah. Getting that big money. He can afford like a whole fleet of Sprinter vans. I don't know if you guys know that. Apparently he like rides to the games in a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van with his mom and his dad. I don't know if he still does that, but I remember his rookie year that being a thing. And I felt like a lot of people didn't point that out. Now, I feel like I was like, whoa, he's just like pulling up to NBA games with the whole fam. You know what I mean? That's kind of impressive. Victor Oladipo, who I heard was going 17 different places, is back with the Miami Heat. That's huge. Bobby Portis, one thing I love about this, Bobby Portis, obviously a far more skilled basketball player than I will ever be, but nonetheless in the realm of NBA basketball players, grinder, intensity guy, really high-level defense, and then on top of that, he be splashing it every once in a while. He be doing his job, and shout out to him, man. Bobby Portis coming back for a 4-year deal to the Milwaukee Bucks. Joe Ingles, who very quickly on the outs with the NBA has signed a 1-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks, and hopefully that means that Joe's going to get back to hitting them knocking down them spot-up threes that we all love to see him hit. Anyway, Joe Ingles, just off the fact that he's one of the funniest dudes in the NBA, I think should be also one of the best trash talkers apparently as well. I think somebody that we should be paying attention to. You know what I mean? Somebody that we should be out here supporting as a community and making it happen. Serge Ibaka, by the way, back with the Bucks after having a back injury that basically has held him out of anything NBA-wise for the past like 3 years, even when he was with the Clippers. Karl Anthony Towns signed a 4-year extension. Get that money. Burn Forbes, who used to play for the Milwaukee Bucks, is now playing for the Timberwolves. Another shooter, I'm sure, that they're going to utilize to the maximum degree, because that was the one thing missing from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Their offensive power was very decisive. It was like very already decided as to where the points were coming from, and they need to have people who can splash it in there a little bit. You know what I mean? Zion Williamson, the biggest mystery box in the history of the NBA, has signed a 5-year extension with the New Orleans Pelicans, and they've done nothing else in free agency in the most New Orleans Pelicans fashion of all time. They've done nothing in free agency other than re-sign their own guy. Jalen Brunson agrees to a 4-year deal with the Knicks, and finally, the infinite eyelash batting between the Knicks and Jalen Brunson is over. One of the most elaborate flirting techniques and flirting periods in NBA history has finally come to an end, folks. The Orlando Magic, huge signing for them. They got Gary Harris, but also don't know about this one. Don't know how I feel about Mo Bamba going back to the Magic, but if there was, where else was he supposed to go, right? Like, he really hasn't emerged as a guy with, like, a super defined skill set, which is a nice way to say that he hasn't shown himself to have mid to high level NBA talent abilities. So we'll see what happens. Big signing for the 76ers. PJ Tucker on a 3-year deal. Where PJ Tucker goes, ladies and gentlemen, the wins follow. Forever going to be a fan of PJ Tucker after what he did for the Houston Rockets. And on top of that, once again, like Bomani Jones likes to say, he's a can't-go-back all-star. Where he came from, he can't go back to. You know what I mean? Daniel House, H-Town, hold it down. Hightower's own, agrees to a 2-year deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. That's two really good defensive players who can have an offensive impact when put in the right position out there for the 76ers, who are clearly loading up for another attempt at breaking the hearts of every single Philadelphia fan across the world. Devin Booker, 4 years for him for that Supermax. Devin Booker, lest we forget, the man forgotten from the 40-1 Kentucky Wildcats team, the least talked about guy and the only superstar out of that group. Crazy to think about that. I think everybody else who was on that 40-1 Kentucky Wildcats team is out of the league except Devin Booker. Wild to think about that, man. Anthony Simmons, who's been one of the biggest upstarts in the NBA for the Portland Trailblazers, has signed a 4-year extension. Good for him. Yusuf Nurkic, one of the most underrated big men in the game, signed a 4-year deal with the Portland Trailblazers. He is one of the backbone pieces of what is seemingly going to be a rebuild. Gary Payton II has agreed to a 3-year deal with the Portland Trailblazers after almost being out of the NBA less than 2 years ago. Legitimately was applying to be the Golden State Warriors video coordinator, and now has signed a 3-year deal to play for the Portland Trailblazers. Shout out to him. Chris Boucher, who, for the Toronto Raptors, if you don't follow Uninterrupted Canada, which I don't understand why you would on Instagram, they posted a video of Chris Boucher talking to his mom on their Instagram, being like, hey, Mom, I signed a deal for, like, generational wealth. You know what I mean? Otto Porter Jr., also back into the game here. He has agreed to a 2-year deal with the Toronto Raptors, one of the most upstart teams in the NBA. A lot of, like, really talented basketball players, but no other than, of course, Spicy P himself, no defined superstars. It's interesting. It's so weird, like how you feel about the Raptors, because like they clearly have good basketball players, but they don't have the kind of basketball player that gets you over the hump in terms of like the playoffs. Anyway, the Utah Jazz have signed no one in free agency, mainly because it looks like they're trying to do the whole retool on the fly thing, so free agency is not their friend. Trading for people is going to be their friend, as it seems like Donovan Mitchell has won the standoff between him and Rudy Gobert, simply for the fact that Rudy Gobert is no longer on the roster. Bradley Beal has agreed to a 5-year extension with the Washington Wizards because, like he says, and we just refuse to believe him, he wants to be there. Don't know why. He wants to be there. Shout out to him. Loyalty. Dame Lillard, Bradley Beal. If we could have friends that were that loyal, how good would everybody's life be? How good would your life be if you had loyalty like Dame Lillard and Bradley Beal around? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for the rest of this show. That's really all I got. And I appreciate everybody for hanging out with me. I really do. Oh, man, I'm trying to find the show. Here we go. Ooh, man, this is bad, guys. This is bad. Trying to find the outro for the show. Anyway, it was literally just playing. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm out of here. Appreciate everybody for showing up. I know it's a Tuesday and we're supposed to record on Friday and everything like that, but I appreciate you for showing up for me, and I'll continue to do so and bring you better and better podcasts as time goes on. This is episode 192. At some point, there's like a magical number of podcasts where we become unstoppable, and I'll let you know where that number is. As we got a clean 90 minutes in here. We got a clean 90 minutes in this show so far. Shout out to everybody who tuned in on Twitch, on YouTube, people who tweeted into the show. Hopefully I answered your questions thoroughly and well. If I didn't, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook. If I didn't, hit me up on Instagram at TheAshtonForever, or hit me up on TikTok there as well at the same name, at TheAshtonForever. Don't forget, we distribute the podcast on iHeartRadio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Music, all that jazz. Any place that you listen to podcasts, the Broke Boy Sports Podcast is there. Shout out to everybody who makes this happen every single week, and that's the people that watch afterwards, during and before. People who watch in the distant future and people who watch in the distant past. I appreciate you. I'm out of here. Make sure you wash your hands, wash your ass, and most importantly, go home, Roger.